Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Lily Hearn Foundation. I'm the Programs Manager here at CUE. Before we get started, I want to go over some quick procedural notes. The first thing is that I'm talking to you live, but we're also recording this info session, and we will post a link to the recording and have already posted a transcript of it on our website. If you aren't able to stay for the whole info session, or if you'd like to refer back to any of this information, that will be available to you. The second thing is, in the description below this video, I've included some directions for how to contribute your questions or requests for clarification on anything we talk about today. Please refer to those instructions, or you can also email us questions that you have at admin@qartfoundation.org. I'll do my best to answer any questions that I receive, but please note that we prefer to answer more general questions that will apply to a larger audience during this session. If your question is about your personal eligibility, or if it's otherwise very specific to your proposal, we ask that you instead email it to CUE's Programs Associate, Josephine Heston, at josephine@qartfoundation.org, and she'll get back to you. On our agenda today, first we're going to talk about some tips and guidelines for the open call, then we'll walk through some examples of successful past proposals. After this, we'll look at sample budgets, both for the solo exhibitions open call and for the curatorial projects open call, and then we'll open it up to any questions that we haven't addressed so far. First, some quick facts. Our exhibitions last 5 to 6 weeks and take place at CUE's Gallery Space in Manhattan. They'll take place between January and December of 2021. The exact dates of the exhibition will be set with you and the curator working with CUE when winning proposals are selected. All application materials need to be submitted online through Submittable by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, March 18th, 2020. Please visit our website for the link to the Submittable application. There's a $10 submission fee, but if you can't afford the fee, please reach out to us and we'll arrange to waive it. Unfortunately, we're not able to accept applications by email or snail mail. Applicants will be notified of results by the end of June 2020. You will be notified via email using the email address that you used to set up your Submittable account, so please make sure that it is an email that you have consistent access to. For winning proposals, CUE contributes a total of $11,160 towards the cost of producing a solo exhibition and $13,160 towards the cost of producing a curatorial project. These amounts include honoraria, a shipping and install budget, the design and printing costs for a full-color exhibition catalog, which we give away for free to visitors to the gallery and which is also available digitally on our website. We'll break down exactly what's included in those contributions a little bit later when we talk about budgets. Next, let's talk about eligibility and who can apply. For curatorial projects, any emerging curators or collaborative teams who are currently living in the United States are eligible to apply. Please note that while you and any artists you include in your proposal may be of any nationality, you all must be living and working in the United States. For solo exhibitions, it's a little bit more complicated. Artists or collaborative teams currently living in the United States who meet all of the following criteria are eligible. You must not have had a solo show at a commercial gallery in New York City within the last 5 years. You must not have current, consistent commercial gallery representation anywhere in the United States. You must not be currently enrolled in a degree program, though if you're set to graduate in May or June of 2020, that's okay. And finally, you must have maintained a studio practice outside of an academic setting for 3 or more years. In order to assess this, we look at the dates of your work samples as well as activities such as exhibitions, residencies, and awards. If you're applying as a collaborative team for a solo exhibition, this shouldn't be the first time that you're working together. You must demonstrate a minimum 2-year history of working as a collaborative team or artist collective, and the application should be completed under one name. So now I'll go over a few frequently asked questions that come up before people generally start the application process. The first is, I'm an artist. Can I apply for both a solo exhibition and a curatorial proposal? The answer is yes, you can, but the caveat is that we do not allow curators to include their own artwork in a curatorial project. Second question is, I have a lot of great ideas. Can I submit multiple proposals in one category? Unfortunately, no. While you can submit one curatorial project proposal and one solo exhibition proposal, you cannot submit more than one proposal in either category. Another question we get often is from artists who have had a solo exhibition at a small gallery in Brooklyn, the Bronx, or another outer borough, and whether or not they're still eligible to apply. The answer to this varies. If your solo show was in a small, non-commercial gallery, an artist-run space, or a non-profit space, then you are still eligible. Please contact us if you're not sure. We also get a lot of questions about the physical limitations of our gallery space and installation-related questions about things like painting the gallery another color or hanging work from the ceiling. Both of these things are possible with caveats. Please visit our open calls FAQs pages for detailed answers to a variety of space and installation related questions. If you still aren't sure if your exhibition is realistic for Q's gallery space, email us, particularly if it's something that has a pretty complicated installation or involves altering the space in any way. So now I'll briefly discuss the selection process. During a preliminary review, entries are immediately disqualified if applicants don't meet our eligibility guidelines, if an applicant submits multiple proposals in the same category, or if applications are incomplete. Double check before you submit to make sure that you have included everything that we require, and ask if you're not sure about your eligibility. The juries only review applications that are complete and by artists who are eligible. After applications are screened for eligibility, an initial jury reviews the applications online to select a short list of applicants to proceed to the next stage. The initial jury remains anonymous and includes representatives from Q's network of alumni and advisors. The finalists are decided by a separate jury comprised of 4 established artists and curators that will convene in New York City in late spring 2020. Each panelist then selects a finalist to work with as a curator mentor throughout the planning stages of the exhibition. They will be asked to provide curatorial support and mentorship to the selected artist, including at least 1 studio or site visit in preparation for the exhibition and conversations about the exhibition and installation, as well as to be present during the installation and opening. They will also write a curatorial statement to be published in the catalog and hopefully will be able to participate in some sort of public program along with the artists during the exhibition. Our panel of artists and curators changes each year and their names remain anonymous until the results of the open call are announced. The panel selects the winning entries based on criteria that includes the quality of the application, the feasibility of the proposal, how well the concept is developed, the originality of the proposal, and the needs of the artists or curators at this particular point in their careers. Strong images and a cohesive written statement always help, both of which we'll discuss later. While we have no specific type of work that we prioritize in terms of subject matter, content, or medium, we do prioritize artists whose work is not as easily presented in commercial galleries. Now let's go over submission requirements. For solo exhibitions, we require a resume or CV, a narrative bio, an artist statement, a short synopsis of your exhibition, a detailed exhibition proposal, a completed budget worksheet, and work samples. For curatorial projects, we require a curator CV, a list of at least 4 participating artists, and short narrative bios for each artist, a short synopsis of the exhibition, a detailed exhibition proposal, a completed budget worksheet, and work samples from your proposed artists. To clarify, an artist's resume or CV should outline your artistic achievements rather than the kind of resume that you may present for a job interview. Ideally, it should be around 4 or 5 pages. Your narrative bio can be up to 200 words and should summarize your resume or CV in full sentences. It should include things like exhibitions, publications, grants, residencies, or other artistic achievements, and it should be written in the third person. So here's an example of a narrative bio from one of our past open call selections. Nancy Floyd exhibited at Q in the fall of 2017. Nancy talks about herself in the third person and outlines her past exhibits, some awards and grants that she has received, a book of hers that was published, and it also explains her education and where she currently lives. I'm not going to read this out loud, but the full bio is included in the transcript of this session that's on our website. Now, your artist statement can be up to 400 words and should describe your artistic practice. It should answer questions like what materials, media, content, and subject matter you work with. We should have some idea after we've read it of what your work is about, what it does, and how. You should write this in the first person, so using I or my. I've included in the description below this video a link to an article about crafting an artist statement by Cara, Ober of BmoreArt, which could be a good resource if you need help writing yours. You can also look at websites of your favorite artists and look at their artist statements to see what you like and what you don't like if you're working to improve your own artist statement. Here's an example of Nancy Floyd's artist statement. She works with photography and she wrote a really concise statement explaining her work. It reads, "My current artistic interests are the passage of time, the aging female body, and loss. One of my long-term projects, Weathering Time, is a 34-year self-portrait project that has evolved into a series of photographs and videos. It's not just the body that changes over time. Fashion and hairstyles evolve, pets come and go, analog clocks and telephones with cords disappear. Film gives way to digital, and the computer replaces the darkroom. The 2,500 plus self-portraits in my archive underscore the physical and technological changes that have occurred over the past 34 years, from my youth to the dawn of my old age. Here's another example by Christina Day, who is another winner of our open call, who showed at Q in late fall of 2016. Christina's work was a little bit more conceptual, but she still does a really good job of talking about her work in a way that's very clear and accessible. Her statement reads, "I multitask between drawing, drafting, and building, and am inspired by the poetry of time captured in found material. I frequently return to match finding, both literally in how repeat patterns link into one another, or how two walls join on a corner, and artistically when two objects of the same make are found in different places at different times by chance. I am interested in staging uncanny sculptural installations that heighten a viewer's sense of what may seem familiar, but is distorted out of context. My architectural constructions and object pattern plays are centered on seams and junctures, offering perspectives that eclipse a view into a singular experience. The outcome understood and measured spatially by the body as a view for one at a time. Similar to the act of taking a photograph, when a view is frozen and framed by one person, I seek to amplify the familiarity of a perspective in my dimensional material play and larger constructions, using the edited and immaterial nature of film and photography as a building source." The next thing that we require for submissions is the short exhibition synopsis, which should use up to 60 words, which generally takes about 2 to 3 sentences. That should explain pretty concisely what's included in your exhibition. So here's an example by Nancy Floyd. She writes, "I'm proposing an exhibition of approximately 15 images for my self-portrait series, Weathering Time, along with video projections of all the 2,500 plus images. Each of the 15 images will contain between 2 and 90 self-portraits and range in size from 10 inches by 13.6 inches to 42 inches by 96 inches. Now hers is very specific. You don't necessarily need to give us dimensions in inches, but what's really great about this is how concise it is and how I have a clear idea of what work is being included in the exhibition." And the detailed exhibition proposal is a place to really delve deep and talk about your exhibition using up to 600 words. It should include a very thorough outline of the exhibition and the background of the work and ideas, so how you developed your concept, what your inspiration was, and what your plan is for the exhibition. Here's an example by Christina Day, and again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the statement in full is available in the session transcript. So Christina's work is an example of work that was a site-specific installation. It's something that she didn't have already made, and she didn't have images available to submit as work samples. This is a question that we receive often. Can I submit new work in my proposal, or can I submit a proposal for a site-specific work or work that I haven't made yet? And the answer is absolutely yes, but then you have a challenge of describing and communicating very clearly what that work will be, convincing us that you can execute it, and submitting images of past works that help to illustrate your idea. So Christina does a really great job of doing that. I've highlighted a few things here that I want to point out specifically. In this first paragraph, Christina talks about her inspiration for the work in a very narrative way. Right at the end of the first paragraph, she situates her proposed work in the rear exhibition space of Q, which shows that she's thinking very specifically about our space, so we know that she's put a lot of thought into having her work shown at Q. At the beginning of the next paragraph, she writes, "In approaching the work in the center of the gallery, a visitor walks up to a large white-walled cube, roughly 14 feet wide by 22 feet long by 8 feet high, to approach a narrow gap in the walls through which is a tight cropped view of deeper inner space." So here she's put herself into the shoes of a gallery visitor and is thinking very concretely about the experience of a viewer in Q space. She's also giving us some dimensions, which allows us to clearly envision what it is that she's proposing. Another thing that she does is discuss her proposal in relation to previous work that she has made and supplied images of, which we'll look at later. But this is a great thing to do, whether you're proposing existing work or new work, to let us know in the exhibition proposal how some of those work samples relate to the exhibition that you're proposing. Let us know if this is a work that's going to be included in the show, if it's a work that's similar to what's included in the show, if it's a work that may be different from what's included in the show, but there are elements of it that help inform the work that you're proposing. Finally, at the end, she writes, "In facilitating the construction of this project, interior buildings are to be built off-site in my studio in Philadelphia and then transported to New York City, where they will be built and finished into place, with outer drywalling completed on-site." So again, that makes it really clear that she's thought about this exhibition from its conception to its transportation to New York City, so how it's going to fit in the space and the feasibility of realizing this exhibition within the constraints of our budget. So at this point, I'd like to go over some general tips for writing that are applicable to any aspect of the written application. The first thing is to write for a general audience. Try to avoid using art jargon or any language that makes it hard to understand what it is that you're proposing. This actually detracts from your application. It's better to write plainly and explain for a general audience what it is that you're proposing. If you have a friend or a family member who would be willing to read your application and let you know if it makes sense to them, that's a great way to check that you're being clear. The second is to be direct. Avoid using the passive voice or the future conditional tenses. We know that this is hypothetical, so you don't need to say, "If selected, my exhibition would include." You can just say, "My exhibition includes." The third thing is to be specific, so write about the specific works included in your exhibition and write specifically about how the exhibition will work at Q. We know that it's a lot of work to put together a proposal and that you may be tempted to recycle it for several organizations or other application opportunities. And while that may be a good place to start, the best chance of getting a show at Q or really anywhere else is to show that you've put in the time and care to tailor your exhibition to that organization or space. So now we'll take a look at some work samples. For solo exhibitions, you can include up to 10 images and 4 videos or audio samples, if that's applicable to your work. For curatorial projects, you should include at least 1 image for each artist, up to 15 images, and video or audio samples where applicable. The first thing to keep in mind is these images should really illustrate your proposal. You can include samples of your completed work, works in progress, a plan or sketch of what you have in mind, or anything that's going to be most effective in illustrating to us your proposed exhibition. Please do not submit a multiple-page PDF or file as one work sample. That is not allowed. The second thing is to use high-quality images and make sure that your images reflect the quality of your work. Make sure that they're clear, bright photographs, photographed on neutral, non-distracting backgrounds. And make sure that they convey what's important about your work. So, for example, if what's important about your work is the fine details, make sure you include some detail shots. So these are Christina Day's work samples. To clarify, the images on the screen right now were submitted as separate images, but for the ease of viewing them, we've thrown multiple images onto each slide. So this is the piece that she referenced in her detailed exhibition proposal called Shift Number 2, and it's the work that was most similar to what she was proposing to do at Q. You'll see as I scroll through that she devoted 5 out of her 10 images to this work. So that was a really smart thing to do, to think about what's going to be most effective in conveying your proposed work and to make sure that your images center around that. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the budget worksheet. So please follow the budget worksheet instructions. Those are included on our website, and they will walk you through exactly how to fill out the budget in detail. We ask that you submit your best, most realistic estimate for your expenses at this point in time. We understand and expect that things are going to change between now and the exhibition, and that's okay, so don't stress out too much. Just do your best in terms of estimating your expenses. If you come across a category that doesn't apply to you in our budget worksheet, put a 0 or an NA for not applicable, just to make sure that you don't miss any areas. When you're done filling out your worksheet, your total income should match your total expenses, and it should be a balanced budget. Alright, so now let's take a look at a sample solo exhibition budget. So the first thing here at the top is exhibition income. We have Q's contribution. The way that this breaks down is an artist honorarium in the amount of $5,000, an art shipping budget in the amount of $1,500, which is round trip, art installation fees of $960, hospitality $200, and catalog printing $3,500, for a total of $11,160. So the artist honorarium is something that you can use as you wish to help cover production expenses or travel and things of that nature. We'll show you how that breaks down when we go down to the expenses section. But the art shipping budget, art installation fees, hospitality, and catalog printing are all fixed amounts that Q contributes. These numbers are based on our experience with the average cost of an exhibition. They cannot be reduced, but they can be added to if you feel like that isn't going to be sufficient funding. but these are the minimum amounts and the fixed amounts that Q will contribute towards each exhibition. So here we have a category called additional income. So if you imagine that $11,160 isn't going to cover your exhibition expenses, then you would be responsible for coming up with some additional funding, whether that's personal savings, a grant from another organization, crowdfunding, etc. Please see this note to indicate received or committed funding with an asterisk. So here as an example, let's say I'm producing a movie for which I have already received a grant from ABC Foundation in the amount of $1,000. This asterisk next to the ABC Foundation grant indicates that I've already received that money and it is committed funding. But I think that I need more money for editing and other production expenses for which I plan to crowdfund, so I put down $2,000 as an uncommitted estimate of what I plan to raise through Kickstarter. So I'm going to add the total additional income with the total exhibition income from Q, so $11,160 plus an additional $3,000 for a total of $14,160. So now let's go down and look at exhibition expenses. The first thing is art shipping. So again, Q is going to contribute $1,500 for shipping. And so for me, I'm showing a film, and maybe I also have some drawings and paintings to transport, but it seems like that's going to be adequate. An example where $1,500 might not be adequate for shipping would be if you had a large-scale sculpture that needed to be created, if your work is very large or is traveling from really far away, and things of that nature. If you're not sure what shipping might cost, my recommendation is to contact some shipping services and request a quote. And that's a really great thing to do for any of your expenses that you're not sure about, including equipment, rental, supplies, and travel. Do some research on who can provide the services you need and get a quote, and include that quote in your estimate here for budgeting purposes. So for my purposes, I'm going to say that $1,500 is going to cover my shipping expenses. But down here, I think my art installation is going to be a little bit complicated. So Q's $960 contribution for art installation fees covers one art handler working for 2 days to install and 2 days to deinstall. We pay art handlers $30 an hour, so that's $240 for one art handler for 8 hours of work. So if you feel like you might need an extra day or two or an extra art handler or two, you can include additional funding in your budget here. So I'm thinking that I'm going to need one extra art handler for 1 day of art handling, and I'm adding $240 to Q's $960 contribution for a total of $1,200. I know that I need to draw that additional funding either from my artist honorarium or from my additional income to cover this expense. Next is hospitality. Q contributes $200, which is the average cost of providing beer or wine for an exhibition opening. I'm fine with that, so I'm just going to put $200 here. If you'd like something additional or something else for your exhibition opening, again, you can draw funding from your artist honorarium or from an additional income source to supplement that hospitality budget. The next category here is catalog printing. This is pre-populated in the sheet and will be pre-populated on your budget because that's not an expense that will change. Down here is equipment rental. So Q does have some equipment. We have a projector, TV monitors, and pedestals, and basic installation supplies. You can email us and request that list if you are working on your budget. So if you need something that Q doesn't have or that you don't have and that you might need to rent, this would be where you're going to put those expenses. So for this, I've imagined that the video I want to make, I'm going to need to rent a camera, some lights, and tools to produce that video. So here I've estimated $500 for equipment rental, which I will put in my expense line. Again, if you're not sure what that rental cost may be, hop online, do some Googling, find some services or companies that rent out equipment, and reach out to them for an estimate of that cost. So for supplies, let's say that I need some paper, paint, packing materials, since Q does not cover the cost of packing your work for transportation. And if I needed any specialized hardware to display my work, that would also be included here. I'm going to estimate that $700 will be good for my supplies. Down here is travel. So we require that artists be at Q for installation and opening of their exhibition, and when possible, to be here for the deinstallation, although that's less crucial. So let's estimate that my travel expenses, including both travel and accommodations, cost $1,500 for airfare, round-trip airfare, and a hotel. You can see, too, that I've itemized all of these expenses down underneath here. So I have my tools, lights, sound editing, etc. Sorry, I'm skipping a bit ahead. For professional services, I'm going to look at the notes down here. So for this purpose, I'm making a video, but I'm not a videographer, and I'm going to need to hire somebody to help me with the video editing. So I've asked a friend of mine who's agreed that $800 is a good budget to help me edit my video. I also want to have my drawings framed, which I've received an estimate for $1,200. And finally, Q covers the cost of the design and printing of a catalog, but what we don't cover is catalog-ready images. So if you need to hire a professional photographer to take images of your work to include in the catalog, that's an expense that should go under professional services. So here I've written, I estimate about $300 to hire a professional to help me photograph my work for the catalog. These expenses collectively add up to $2,300, which I have entered here under professional services. So next is this line item marked Other. If you anticipate expenses that don't fall into any of these categories, you throw them in here. In my case, I don't have any, so I've just put 0 to make sure that I'm populating every blank space in my budget. So next line down here is my artist honorarium after expenses, and my additional income after expenses. I have $2,760 left for my honoraria after adding my additional income and subtracting all of my expenses, but no additional income after expenses since I will have spent it all on goods and services. So now we do the math and we add up all of my exhibition expenses in this category and make sure that it adds up to $14,160, which matches my total income of $14,160. And if you go through this and add it up, it all adds up and it's a balanced budget. So if you have questions about your budget, I'd say the best thing to do is, again, refer to our budget worksheet instructions that are listed in the resources section at the bottom of the open call pages of our website. That will walk you through each section of the budget in great detail. If after looking at that you're still confused and have questions, definitely shoot us an email. Now we'll look at a sample curatorial budget, which is similar, but the numbers are a little bit different. I'm going to move a little faster to this one since we went over quite a bit of relevant and applicable information when talking about the solo exhibition budget. But here at the top, we have the exhibition income that Q contributes for a curatorial project, which is $13,160. This breaks down to $2,500 for the curator honorarium, $2,500 for an artist fee budget to distribute to your exhibiting artists, and a $2,000 production budget. The rest of the numbers here are the same as for a solo exhibition, and like a solo exhibition, the following numbers are fixed and cannot be altered. So again, that includes $1,500 for round-trip shipping, $960 for art installation fees, $200 for hospitality, and $3,500 for catalog printing. The total here adds up to $13,160. If you feel like these numbers are not going to cover your expenses, you can supplement things like shipping and art installation fees with your production budget or with additional income. You can use your curator honorarium if you'd like, though this is not something that's meant to be used in the same way as the artist honorarium to cover things like supplies or fabrication costs. These costs should come out of the production budget if possible. The curator honorarium is meant to be used mostly to cover curator travel and whatever else the curator wants to use that money for personally. So again, if $13,160 is not going to be sufficient to cover your expenses, please add to this additional income category, income that's committed, meaning money that you've already received or that you know that you will receive on time for the exhibition, or money that you haven't yet received as potential income. So here, let's say I've applied to ABC Foundation, which, to be clear, is a fictional foundation, for a grant in the amount of $1,500. This is not something I am sure that I will receive, but I'm going to include it here for my budgeting purposes in the additional income section. So for the total income, I'm going to add that number, $1,500, to the $13,160 that Q will contribute, for a total of $14,660. So moving down to exhibition expenses, artist fees are going to include the fees for all artists who are included in the exhibition, as well as fees for any guest speakers or artists who might participate in panel discussions, workshops, or other events that you produce in conjunction with your curatorial project. For these fees, Q adheres to working artists in the greater economy or wage guidelines to set the minimum amount for what we will pay artists and speakers. If there is room in the budget, you can certainly pay them more than the wage suggestions. We've included those guidelines in a detailed budget instruction sheets for curatorial projects on our worksheet, which is, on our website. So please take a look here for that information. It's on the second page, and there's a breakdown of every expense that you might pay during the course of your exhibition. If you'd like more information on WA.G.E, check out their website, which is also listed underneath this video. So here down in my notes, I've broken down exactly how much I'm going to pay each artist and participant in my public programs. Since I have decided to pay each artist over the wage guidelines for a group show with 7 artists, this does exceed the $2,500 that Q contributed, but I can pull that excess from my production budget, which I have noted here on the worksheet. So I'm going to go ahead and take this $2,980 and put that up here for my artist fees. Next, for art shipping, all of my artists are pretty local to the New York area, so I'm not too worried about my shipping costs exceeding $1,500, so I've just left that here. Again, if you're not sure if it seems like the work is heavy or large or it's coming from further away, you can supplement your art shipping budget with the production budget or with additional income. For art installation fees, it's going to be a pretty straightforward installation, so I'm just going to estimate that the $960 that Q contributes for 2 days of one art handler installing and 2 days of one art handler de-installing for my show will be enough. For hospitality, again, I'm happy with the $200 for wine for the opening. Catalog printing is a fixed cost, so there's nothing to change there. For equipment rental, I want to rent a projector for the artist workshop. I did some research and found a high-quality projector for $250, so I'll enter that here under my equipment rental. And I've also itemized it down here in my notes. So for supplies, I estimate I will need $350 for hardware and other installation supplies. For professional services, I decided that I'd like to hire a carpenter to make a custom display for my exhibition, for which I got a quote for $715, and I've entered that here and in my notes. Catalog photography or framing costs are other common examples of professional services that are commonly required for an exhibition. So basically, anytime that you're hiring someone to help you with some component of your exhibition, that expense would fall under professional services. Under Other here, I've decided that I want to have exhibition postcards to spread the word about this exhibit. I've done some research and it's going to cost about $235 to have those printed, so I've entered that in my other line, and I've also itemized that down here in my notes. So the last thing here is curator travel. We do require that the curator be here for the installation and for the opening, as well as any events that you're proposing in conjunction with your curatorial project. If you're coming from out of town, we usually can schedule those public programs to coincide with either your opening or with the closing of the show if getting to New York is difficult for you. For this purpose, let's say I live pretty close in Philadelphia and I have some friends that I can stay with when I come to New York. So I think that $500 will cover my travel expenses for a couple of round-trip train tickets to New York City. This kind of expense needs to be withdrawn from my curator honorarium or from additional income. It cannot be taken from the production budget. So I've decided to use $500 from my ABC grant for my travel, and since my production budget is slightly over the allotted $2,000, that leaves me with $2,470 for my honorarium and $1,000 left of the grant, which I've entered under the additional income after expenses line. I can use this $1,000 for incidentals or things that come up during the planning process that I've not budgeted for here. After double checking, my total expenses match my income and my budget is balanced, so I am all set. And again, I've itemized and explained everything in my notes down here, and down here in additional notes as well. So I'm going to wrap up now before opening up to questions with some general advice for you all before you submit, and then we'll open up to questions. So the first thing is to double check your application and check it multiple times. Once you submit, it cannot be edited. Make sure that you've completed all of the required application materials, make sure that your links work, that all of your work samples are attached, that you've attached your budget worksheet and CB. My advice here would be to take a look at our website where we outline exactly what you need to include in your application. Work on your application in a Word document or another document that you can save, and then copy and paste into the submittable form so you don't run into any glitches with the site while trying to submit. The second thing is to get a second opinion on your application. If you have a friend or a family member who would be willing to read through your application and give you some feedback and let you know if they understand your proposal, that's always really helpful. The third thing is to plan ahead. We do receive a high volume of submissions the day before the deadline, and submittable can get a little bit overwhelmed, so if possible, submit early. And the fourth thing is to ask questions. If you're not ready to ask questions right now, you can email our programs associate, Josephine, at josephine@qartfoundation.org, especially if you have questions that are specific to your proposal, budget, or what's allowed in the gallery space, your eligibility, how to submit the application. She'll do her best to answer all of your questions as soon as she can, but again, please plan ahead. If it's the week of or the day of the deadline, she may be getting a lot of emails and might not be able to get to all of your questions before the deadline. Lastly, if possible, we recommend coming by the space if you're local and able to do so. We do have floor plans available on our website as well as photos and videos of the gallery space, but seeing it in person and getting a feel for it is helpful in thinking about your exhibition if you can. So that's all for us. At this point, if anyone has any questions that I've not covered or if there's something I haven't fully explained, please say so in the comments and I'll do my best to address those questions. Oops, sorry. Okay, so we have a question here from Nico who asked if equipment that Q already has is not counted in equipment rental. Yes, that's correct. If you need some equipment and we already have that, you do not need to pay for it. We can provide that to you for free. Nico also asked what artwork counts as not conventional for traditional gallery setting. We are thinking of work that is maybe not going to be as successful in a commercial gallery. So a lot of times, commercial galleries are looking for works that can be easily sold. I think a really great example from a recent open call would be Mo Kong. You can look at his exhibition. It was a very site-specific installation with a lot of components that evolved over the course of the exhibition, the 5 weeks, and so not everything that show could be easily sold or shown in a commercial gallery. Carla asked, how does the curator-mentor process work for artists based outside of New York City? So most of our mentors are based in New York, since we are, but for artists outside of New York City, they still have a great experience with their mentors. We ask that they do some Skype studio visits or things like that and still have phone calls or conversations amongst each other over the course of the planning process. And then if they don't have a chance to meet in person, you can meet during the exhibition installation, and that curator would still be present for the installation process to finally see the work in person and to give you some feedback on the work and how it's installed in the gallery space. Anna asks, what do you consider an artist living, working in the US? What if they go back and forth? That can get a little bit tricky, but we ask that your studio practice be based in the United States. The reason that we ask this is because Q cannot cover international shipping. So if you travel back and forth, that could work out, but you would just need to make sure that everything that you are shipping is coming from the US and that you are able to be present enough to have meetings and check-ins with us. It is a long planning process. There's a lot of back and forth, not only with your curator mentor, but also with the Q staff in planning this exhibition. So, you need to be available for meetings. We can also set those up via Skype if you're not able to be here in person. Anna also asked, can a curator propose an artist collective? If there are 4 people, would that be considered 4 artists or 1? So if it's a collective that can demonstrate that they are have been working as a collective for 2 or more years, and basically if their collective is thought of as kind of one person or they would be shown under that one name, then yes, that's fine, and they would only count as 1 artist. Finn asked if the artists included in the curatorial proposal have to be in the final exhibition. No, they do not. We realize that, things change and that we don't ask that every artist in your proposal be committed at the time that you are applying, but we do ask that your proposal be realistic. So, don't propose to show giant artists who you don't know and probably would not be able to get to agree to be in the show. In addition, we also ask that at least half of your exhibiting artists for a curatorial proposal are also considered underrepresented or emerging. So again, no commercial gallery representation, no solo shows in New York City in the past 5 years, and the same kind of requirements as our solo exhibition artists. Carla asked, do we have to use the entire space? I have a proposal for the front gallery only. Is that okay? Unfortunately, that is not okay. We need your proposal to take up the entire gallery space. So that includes the front and the back galleries. We do not do separate shows for the front and the back space. Somebody named Empress of the Universe says she lives in New Mexico and much of their work is on board. So they think that shipping will exceed the $1,500. Am I responsible for any additional costs, or is there a possibility for more funding through Q? In your budget, you should plan on taking those costs from your artist honorarium. Q will do our best if we are working with somebody coming from further away to try to supplement the shipping costs, but it is not guaranteed, so definitely plan to have that be supplemented from your artist honorarium. Adrian asks, is a gallery floor plan available? Yes, that is on our website. It is both on our solo exhibition page and our curatorial projects page. If you scroll down to the bottom, I can actually take you right here. If you scroll down to the bottom, beneath the application button, there are submission requirements, and down here there are resources. There's a link here to FAQs, tips for crafting proposal, and then here is a gallery floor plan. This is also included on the curatorial page if you scroll down, and then these FAQs will actually be a little bit different for the curatorial proposal since it is a different type of requirement. You can also see on both of these pages the past curatorial open call selections, or on the solo ones, past open call, solo exhibition open call proposals, so you can get a sense for the kinds of shows that we have had recently. Finn asks, does the curatorial proposal have to be the first time showing? Could it be an extension of another exhibition? We ask that it is not something that has been shown before. For both the solo exhibition proposals and curatorial project proposals, we want to be showing exhibitions that have not been seen before. If it's something that significantly builds on or kind of changes from something that's been shown before, that could possibly work out, but we don't just want a traveling show for Q. We want to be showing brand new work that hasn't had a chance to be exhibited somewhere else. Anna asks, is there a list of equipment that Q already has for reference? Yes, there is. Please email us. You can email admin@qartfoundation.org or josephine@qartfoundation.org, and we can send you a list of the equipment that we have so you know what we can cover for you and what you might need to rent or buy for yourself. Anna also asks, how important are additional programs to a curatorial proposal? Is it important to include them in a proposal? I would say that you don't have to have that fully figured out at the time that you are submitting your application, but we do ask that for both solo exhibitions and curatorial projects, we like to do some programming, at least one program over the course of the exhibition. It's a great opportunity to get people back into the gallery space, to see your work, to see your show, to talk about it, to kind of generate conversation and community around your exhibition. So it's not required, but I will say that in the past, when there are applications from people that have thought a lot about possible programs and extensions, that does strengthen the application. Okay. So Finn is asking, is the curatorial budget sheet final for the actual exhibition, or is it subject to change? It's definitely subject to change. We ask you to do these budget worksheets so that we can make sure that your idea is feasible, and that that it can actually be realized in our space and with our funding. We know that between the time that you propose your exhibition and the time that the exhibition is realized, things will change. So nothing in your proposal is set in stone. That's for either curatorial or solo projects. These are ideas, and sometimes there's a year or more in between when you've submitted your application and when the exhibition is actually happening at Q. So things will definitely change, and that's okay. But what will not change is the cost of what Q contributes towards your show. So that is not flexible. So whatever changes, you just need to make sure that you are budgeting appropriately, that you're aware how that will affect your allotted funding, and that if it's something that's going to take you over that Q contribution, that you are able to supplement that either through your honorarium, through additional funding, however you need to do that. Anna asks, what do you consider an emerging curator? That is a good and tricky question, since it seems, we have a little bit more specific requirements for the solo exhibition projects. Emerging curators, we ask that you have a limited amount of experience. We're trying to give this opportunity to people that haven't had a ton of chances to curate a show by themselves, and to have that experience from concept to execution. So things definitely change. We've worked with curators who are independent curators who have curated things at different spaces. We've worked with people who have held positions in curatorial departments at other institutions, but have not necessarily had the chance to develop and execute their own concepts for exhibitions. If you're not sure, if you think that you're overqualified or aren't sure about your eligibility for a curatorial proposal, again, just shoot us an email and we'll take a look at your CV and let you know if we think that you qualify, since it is a little bit of a tricky requirement. Okay, Anna's asking again, is performance okay to include in the exhibition? Yes, that's fine. But again, make sure that whatever you're including is feasible. So if it's a performance and that's going to, cost money, you need to be including the cost of supplies for that. If you're going to record that performance, if you want to live stream that performance, if you need to, hire a production crew to help you, if you need to hire assistants for that performance, if you need supplies for that performance, we don't have things like, lighting and for performances or spotlights or, any kind of that sort of equipment. So just make sure that it's a realistic proposal for a performance. We also have included in that sheet that I had showed here, this budget worksheet for curatorial proposals. We have in the artist fee sections rates for performers. So if it's an artist who's just performing, you can work out from here what their fee would be. But if that artist is also hiring performers to perform with them, then keep in mind that those performers also need to be paid. Finn asks, will Q continue to mentor the curator after the exhibition, such as industry networking and opportunities? We do try to keep in touch with our curators and artists after the exhibition. We don't really offer another exhibition opportunity, but we do try to keep engaging people if possible. In the past, we've invited people back to participate in public programs. We're definitely happy to make introductions and kind of use our network and resources to help you, and on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, we'll definitely try to keep in touch with you and help in any way that we can. If you need letters of reference, if you need contacts, it's definitely something that we're happy to do. Nico asks, are open call artists paired with writers from the Art Critic Mentoring Program? Yes. Every artist, whether open call or nomination, are paired with art critics from that art critic mentoring program. So it's a hybrid process through another open call for that program or through nominations. So if you win, we're happy to ask you if there's someone in particular that you'd like to work with and see if that could work out. We'll also open it up to our network and just receive applications from emerging art writers for that opportunity. But every artist who shows at Q gets a catalog, and in that catalog, they have a long-form critical essay written on their work. I'm just waiting for more questions. I'll also add, since there's no questions coming in right now, that you can see all of our catalogs online. So every exhibition page has a link to their catalog, or there's a catalog tab in the sidebar. So you can take a look, and the essays are available on our website as well as in those digital formatted catalogs as well. Nico asks, can artists design their own catalog? No, you cannot. We set a template for each year for the catalog design, which has to be followed. It just gets a little bit too complicated of a process to try to have everyone design their own catalogs. So we do that in-house. We'll request specific materials from you, and we will definitely send you drafts before we send those to print and allow you to give us feedback on the layout and design, and we'll work with you to make sure that you're happy with that catalog, but you cannot design it yourself. Anna asks, is there a graphic design budget line for the exhibition for labels, title wall, etc.? That's a good question. We order only wall vinyl for exhibitions, so we have just the title of the show, the name of the artists and curators, and the dates that we have when you first enter the gallery on the door and on the wall when you walk in. We don't generally do wall labels, so if it's something that you think is going to be necessary for your exhibition, it's something that you should be budgeting for. There's a lot of great vinyl production companies in New York City and beyond. You can just do some quick Googling and try to figure out how much that might cost you. But in general, I'll say that vinyl is not such a great expense. If you wanted to do something like museum-style foam core plaques next to each artwork, that would definitely be a more significant expense. All right, so we have a few more minutes if anyone has any additional questions. Okay, if nobody has any more questions at this time, I might wrap up a little bit early. I'm gonna hang on for just another minute or two to see if anything comes in. If you don't think of it now or if it comes up later, like I said, please email us. We're happy to answer your questions. Please, though, be aware that, we'll do our best to get back to your emails as quickly as possible, but, there's a lot of people asking questions, and so please be patient with us. We're doing our best to try to get back to everybody about their proposals. But yes, please be patient. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much for tuning in, and good luck with your application.